Hello and welcome to Haunted Montreal's Spooky Story Sessions. I'm your host, Holly Rhiannon, and today I'm going to tell you all about the Eden Museum site at Monument National. Here at Haunted Montreal, we bring you ghost stories in both French and English every Saturday. Before we get into today's story, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you get notified every time we have a new tale to share. And hey, if you're already subscribed, a big thank you and welcome back. We are so glad you're here. Now, without further ado, let's get spooky. In 1894, Montrealers were treated to the opening of a bizarre new museum. Located beneath the busy Monument National Theatre, the Eden Museum offered an unparalleled look into the mysterious and satisfied a taste for the sensational. Founded by International Shows Limited, the company's aim was to organize the metropolis of Canada, an undertaking especially consecrated to fine arts and the glorious episodes of the history of the world. The museum's subterranean galleries were designed principally for the young people, intended as a continual source of instruction and amusing recreation, the actual reproduction of events being more long-lasting than a page of history learned off by heart. The directors of the company sought to curate subjects for the instruction and amusement of the public, carefully excluding the vulgar or offensive. The grandiose front entrance of the Eden Museum was made of a rare-looking wood and had colored glass embedded throughout. A clerk with gold-trimmed costume would take a 10-cent entry fee. Upon entering, guests were treated to a magnificent art gallery where a wax statue of Her Majesty the Queen in court dress and jewelry reigned above the crowds. Nearby, also cast in wax, was His Holiness Pope Leo XIII, wearing pontifical garments. Numerous artworks were generously displayed on the walls. From the gallery, guests climbed a short staircase and entered the Room of Curiosities. Living curiosities, such as little people and contortionists, intermingled with a strange collection including vagaries of nature, scientific and optical wonders of informative and interesting character. The room also contained several statues and wax figures, stereoscopic views of battlefields and other historic sites, not to mention a wide assortment of curiosities. Visitors could also spend time trying to navigate a magical maze. Nearby was the Chamber of Horrors, where guests experienced an ossified man, mummies from Mexico, a skeleton of a devil child, born with feet and a tail like a calf, and a replica opium den, amongst other strange offerings. Notorious murder scenes were also recreated, and some of the society's most dangerous criminals were cast in wax. The museum proudly offered lifelike reproductions of the Rawdon murder, the St. Canu murder, the St. Henry mystery, the Valleyfield murder, the St. Cunegond tragedy, Dr. Crippen, and Jack the Ripper. Another popular exhibit featured a gorilla carrying off a woman after having killed her husband. Whereas in The Devil's Kitchen, visitors could witness Satan and his imps roasting a man over a large fire. What was it we were saying again about excluding the vulgar and offensive? Never mind. There was also a theatorium, an intimate 200-seat theater with wonderful performances set every hour, including live concerts, farces, plays, and other presentations. Eventually, as technology advanced, the Eden Museum began offering silent films and other projections. The museum also employed a special police force to maintain order in the exhibitions and to ensure that women and children could visit without fear of harassment or molestation. With frequent changing exhibitions, guests never knew what was in store for them at the Eden Museum. One of Eden's strangest attractions appeared in 1905 when the corpse of the world's tallest man, Beaupré the Giant, was put on display. At 8'3" the cadaver became a major tourist attraction, an actual embalmed human specimen among the waxworks. Edouard Beaupré was born in the southern Saskatchewan town of Willowbunch on January 9, 1881. An aspiring horseman, he had to give up the trade at 17 because at 7'1" he had simply grown too tall to ride a horse. His freakish growth continued until he finally reached a towering height of 8'3". Beaupré abandoned life on the ranch and launched into show business, demonstrating his strength by bending iron bars and lifting horses onto his shoulders. He toured from Winnipeg to Montreal, and even stayed for a time in California. While in Montreal, on March 25, 1901, Beaupré wrestled Louis Cyr, a famous French-Canadian strongman, who was widely regarded as the strongest man who ever lived. While Cyr easily won the match, Beaupré's reputation as a strongman only increased. He was very much in demand by numerous traveling circuses, museums, and freak shows of the era. On July 1, 1904, Beaupré signed a contract with a circus promoter to appear at the St. Louis World's Fair. However, shortly after arriving in St. Louis, Beaupré contracted tuberculosis, which quickly resulted in a high fever. Only 23 years old, he became gravely ill and died suddenly at a local St. Louis hospital, only 2 days after signing the contract. His family had been unable to afford the costs of transporting his body home to Saskatchewan, so the circus requested that his corpse be embalmed in order to display it. In death, Beaupré was more popular than ever. His towering, embalmed corpse drew huge crowds at the St. Louis World Fair and was the envy of many circuses, freak shows, and museums. Eden Museum was somehow able to obtain the body of Beaupré the Giant and had the cadaver transported to Montreal in 1905. The deceased embalmed giant was put on display amongst the waxworks, despite, once again, to avoid vulgar and offensive displays. The macabre exhibit proved to be extremely popular. Huge crowds began to overwhelm the museum in hopes of catching a glimpse of the dead giant. After crowds became too large and unruly, managers were forced to remove Beaupré's corpse from the exhibition. His body was left abandoned in a warehouse, and eventually it was claimed by the University of Montreal for research purposes. Doctors, professors, and medical students, no doubt fascinated by his freakish anatomy, proceeded to perform various medical experiments on the body, some of them surgical. Beaupré's corpse was finally repatriated to Saskatchewan in 1989 after his family overcame numerous bureaucratical obstacles to get the cadaver back from the University of Montreal. Beaupré's corpse had been seriously compromised, no doubt after decades of medical experiments, so family members had him cremated before finally burying his ashes 85 years after his death. Meanwhile, the Eden Museum was closed in 1940 after it was deemed too tawdry by the Saint Jean-Baptiste Society, who owned the Monument National. The organization representing Francophone Catholics had commissioned the theater's construction in the 1890s as a monument to celebrate the glory of the French-Canadian nation. The striking building, designed with a neo-Renaissance facade, officially opened on June 24th, Saint Jean-Baptiste Day, in 1893. Over the years, the Monument National witnessed all sorts of incredible performances. Located on the Lower Main, an area that was in the process of becoming the Jewish district of Montreal, the Monument National soon established itself as a hotbed of creativity, innovation, debate, and performances that made it one of the most important multi-ethnic community and cultural centers in America. Famous 19th century celebrities performed in the huge auditorium on the first floor, and a burlesque theater called the Starland occupied the ground floor. The Monument National also hosted feminist performances and Yiddish theater, and is regarded as the birthplace of the struggle to establish women's voting rights in Quebec. Following the Second World War, the Monument National began a long downward spiral. The Lower Main had blossomed into Montreal's sketchy red light district, characterized by brazen prostitution, over-gambling, and trafficking of all kinds. Audiences opted to attend the larger, safer, and more comfortable theaters located on St. Catherine Street, leaving the Monument National to sink into oblivion. The Saint Jean-Baptiste Society, which was struggling financially at the time, moved out in 1976. For a time, it seemed inevitable that the Monument National would be demolished, but after miraculously avoiding the wrecking ball several times, the Monument National was officially designated a valuable cultural property in 1976. The National Theatre School of Canada took control of the building and carried out a full restoration from 1991 to 1993. Today, an intimate theatrical studio sits in the basement where Eden Museum once flourished. And according to staff and students, this part of the building is haunted. There are reports of pipes inexplicably banging and strange noises erupting in the basement studio. According to an article in Journal Metro, the school's technical director, Yves Duceppe, was very reluctant to go there alone when he was a student there from 1979 to 81. At the time, the dark, unrenovated basement was creepy and infested with rats and insects. He never ventured there alone. Apparently, despite being converted into a versatile theatrical studio, the mysterious hauntings continue. Many of the students report feelings of unease and of being watched by someone or something hiding in the studio's dark recesses. Furthermore, 2 floors above the studio, there are also numerous reports of a ghostly woman appearing at the top of the stairs leading to the main theater of the Monument National. There are whispers among theater students that the ghost haunting the Monument National is none other than Sarah Bernhardt, one of the greatest French actresses of her era. Bernhardt was known to play in Montreal and Quebec City and had a reputation for upsetting Catholic authorities with performances that were critical of the church. The theory suggests that Bernhardt haunts the Monument National because in 1905 she had wanted to play there, but due to financial constraints, had to play at the cheaper Théâtre Français instead. Despite being referred to as the most famous actress the world has ever known, Bernhardt was an extremely eccentric actress. She had several strange phobias, including fears of being buried alive, becoming thin, growing old on stage, and losing her fascinating and almost uncanny beauty. To overcome her fear of premature burial, Bernhardt was known to sleep in an uncomfortable coffin for several years. She also kept the skeleton of a man, whom she said had died from love, hung before the mirror in her creepy boudoir, with his finger pointing at his own reflection. When Bernhardt died in 1923 from uremia, the funeral arrangements were simple. She had had her tomb built decades before her demise, in 1889, in Paris's Cimetière du Père-Lachaise. But could her ghost have returned to haunt the grandiose Monument National, a theater she had always wanted to play at? The ghostly image seen at the top of the theater's main staircase could be a match. But what of the mysterious noises, including banging pipes and upsetting feelings, that haunt the Studio Hydro-Quebec? It seems unlikely that the ghost of a demure actress could cause such a ruckus. Perhaps a more feasible theory is that the noises are caused by the spirit of Edward Beaupré, the giant whose embalmed cadaver was unceremoniously put on display among the waxworks at the old Eden Museum. Generally speaking, the dead do not like to be disrespected, and Beaupré's remains suffered numerous indignities. Denied a proper burial with family in Saskatchewan and pumped full of formaldehyde, his corpse was transformed into a freak show curiosity to be bartered and shipped to the highest bidder. From the St. Louis World's Fair to Montreal's Eden Museum, Beaupré's remains would be continuously gawked at by thrill seekers until ultimately being abandoned in a dusty warehouse. Reclaimed by medical staff at the University of Montreal, his corpse would then suffer many more indignities until finally being reclaimed by family in 1989. Edward Beaupré, a giant and strong man in life, would certainly be capable of making quite a bit of noise. As such, perhaps a more realistic theory about the ghost haunting the basement studio is that the restless spirit of Beaupré the Giant remains, constantly reminding those who dare to enter the studio about his unnatural ordeal by banging pipes, making noises, and glaring at spooked people from the dark nooks and crannies. After all, being denied a proper burial for 85 years is good reason to make any spirit restless and inclined to haunt locations where their remains were disrespected. Are you a Montreal resident or perhaps a tourist who has experienced something strange at the Monument National? If so, we want to know. As always, we want to hear your theories about what could be going on. Thank you so much for stopping by. If it's your first video, we do hope you'll stick around for the next one. We post videos in both French and English every Saturday. If you'd like to learn more about the organization founded by Donovan King, it's all in the description down below. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll have a new video out next Saturday, but until then, stay spooky!